but I can't rehearsal. You know?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Uh, Going live in 1 second.
Is this girl?
I will start letting people in now, sir.
All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the broadcast this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
Um, I think this evening, sir, we'll be starting on a rather somber note because I know that you love exploration and you love space, and you talk about that quite often. But I think that this evening there is some news coming out regarding the sub Titan, and would like to get your reactions to some of the news that we are hearing on there, sir. So I'll start with that this evening.
Yes. The latest news is that they have found the debris of the sub-Titan. I think why we need to be circumspect about jumping to conclusions. There is only one conclusion one can come to if the debris has really been found. If it was possible, if this were a live audience in a hall, of course, I will ask us for a moment of silence as a tribute to these five souls who now we can conclude have been lost. We need to pay tribute to them. You see, the human spirit is an adventurous one. And it is through adventure that we've made discoveries. If space is there, human beings will go there. If Himalaya, okay. You know that mountain, the highest,
Himalayas.
the Himalayas. If it's there, we will climb it. If there is the deepest cave that they've ever come across, human beings will want to explore it. And with the sea, as deep, because human beings swim on the surface, we assume that actually the ocean is safer than space travel. Actually, it isn't. The Titanic is lying 4 miles down to the seabed, 4 miles. And yet, that is even not the deepest of the seabeds. We know the distance between Earth and Moon is constant. We know the distance between Earth and Mars, or Earth and Venus. But frankly, we don't know the distance between the surface of the ocean and the deepest of the ocean. And yet, the human spirit wants to explore. We want to go there. This is the indomitable aspect. That's the way God made us. If it is there, we will go there. And don't let us forget that there has been tragedy in space. Rockets have exploded. People have died going to the Himalayas. And so this now adds to the death associated with the deepest of the deepest part of the ocean. And it adds to the story of the tragedy of the Titanic itself. And so I salute the human spirit. I salute that soul that aspires to discover. I also salute the way humanity had forgotten all differences, all expenses, and raced to try to help. We shouldn't forget that this sub-Titan that sank was a commercial enterprise. The man who made it was making money out of it. People pay heavily. It's not cheap. But when the tragedy happened, people forgot all about expenses. I mean, if the expense involved in this search and rescue operations were to be debited to the account of the company, they will bankrupt the company. Absolutely. No doubt about it. And so I welcome and I draw attention to that aspect of humanity that rises when there is tragedy like this to be faced. We all of a sudden remember that we are one, that we are created as one. We respond as one. We forget we are French, Canadian, Russian, Chinese. We forget all that. We race to the spot to try to see what we can do. That's the best of us. So I suppose it's the worst of times and it's the best of times. Do you know that I believe it is in Japan, they are building a replica of the Titanic, a replica down to the last boat. And when it is finished, they are going to sail from Southampton on the exact date that the Titanic that sank sailed and retrace that journey. People are already booking, millionaires who have a lot to lose financially if again that one goes down. They're already making their reservation. Believe me, if there's somebody who could say, Prof, will pay for your cabin, I will sign on. Because yes, we are human beings, but we rise above that humanity. That's why we are made. So I join and I ask all of us on this platform to please remember in prayers their souls, to please remember in prayers the sorrow of their families, but to please also join in celebrating them. We must always celebrate our adventurers. Those who discovered the North Pole, those who discovered the South Pole, a lot of people died. But it is in death that the discovery surfaces. And it is done not by machine, but by human beings.
Thank you for that, sir. But I don't know if this is too early to ask this question. But some are clearly talking about what seems to be the clear attempt by the organization to avoid safety regulations, how primitive the machine was that they took down, and that the risks were just too high uh, for the kind of expedition that they went on. And even the fact that they asked people to sign the risk of death is included in this. One person said three times on the first page of the contract said you could die on this trip. Um, where do we draw the lines with this kind of trips that people, this kind of trips that people are making, and clear violations of safety protocols?
Well, look, yes, you are right, and I think that if any good is going to come out of this tragedy, it is going to be maybe under the canopy of the United Nations, an international protocol that lays down the guidelines, binding guidelines that any machine or any of these discovery voyages must go through, that, to be certified. Because I mean, after all, in spite of everything that I have said, this recovery exercise is going to cost quite a package. Millions of dollars it is going to cost. And so I expect that nobody, I don't think there will be anybody now who will protest if before, you see, again, we human beings, we don't like attempts at circumscribing our freedom of action. If before now people have said, right, we must, have an international covenant that will be guiding, people will say, no, leave people, don't encroach on people's freedom, leave people alone. If they want to take risk, let them take risk. But I think now people will tell businessmen who, in order to make money, are prepared to risk the lives of others, that, well, when you get into trouble, we respond. Humanity responds, the world responds. Therefore, the world has earned the right to have a binding covenant or a binding convention that would prevent this kind of what I will call cowboy attitude towards things like this. You make reference to what you have to sign, and risk of death is listed on the first page. I don't know if you've ever gone into hospital to have an operation done. It is that very morning of the operation that they bring you this 10-page document that you have to sign, absolving the hospital of being sued in case the consequences of the operation goes bananas and death results. And I always say, why are you bringing this to me on the very morning of the operation, when already I can't even concentrate on breathing, not to talk about concentrating on the document you are putting in front of me. You've admitted me to this hospital a week ago. Why didn't you bring me the document at that time? Of course, you know the reason. If they brought that document about, a week ago or 5 days ago, most of us will run out of the hospital. But it's just that there is always that possibility of something going wrong. But in this particular case, I do agree with those who say the risk was just too high. But then those who paid to go know that the risk, the risk was too high. We will always, as I said a few minutes ago, maybe we justify our existence by taking risks. I had a friend who, in playing polo, fell off the horse and broke his neck and died. I'm sure he died before even hitting the ground. And yet I went on a horse and fell off the horse. And that didn't stop me from continuing to ride. Of course, I'm paying a price now that I'm older. My bones, are older than when I fell off the horse. We will always take risks. That's part of being human.
Yes, sir. And on that note, let me talk about the risk that African leaders took when they went to Kiev and to Russia with a peace plan. And it appears that in fact, not even it appears, from what we can see, Putin shut them down within minutes of them even starting to talk about the peace plan. How do you react to that news, sir?
I think we were insulted. When I say we, I know not all of us were on that trip, number one. Number two, we didn't send those who decided to pick on themselves to go. Number three, it was an ego trip facilitated by Cyril Ramaphosa, who probably was looking for some um, something he would do to divert attention from the corruption charge hanging around his head. But nevertheless, everybody says African leaders. And so all of us Africans now have to bear the shame for the way we were treated. Number one, when they got to Kiev, capital of
Ukraine.
Ukraine, in fact, they had to run. They had to run in and hide when Russian missiles and what have you, came down on Kiev while they were there, just like the way the United Nations Secretary General was treated when he also went there. And drones were sent over Kiev. Drones and missiles were sent there that, the African leaders had to take cover right there. And then when they got to Russia, to Moscow, in the middle of the presentation by Ramaphosa, Putin cut him off, interrupted him. I have a bit of experience as a foreign minister, and there are several people on this platform, seasoned ambassadors. I've never in my life, in my experience, known of one head of state interrupting the presentation of another head of state. Of course, I wouldn't have taken that. If I were a head of state leading that delegation, I would have said, excuse me, Mr. Putin, don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. We are here to bail you out of what looks like, the mess you are creating for your people and for our people and for the world. We are here to ensure that you don't lead us into a nuclear conflict, never mind, a nuclear, war. And here you are interrupting me. I resent that. And on behalf of Africans, I think you owe us an apology. I would have done that. But Ramaphosa just sat there and took the insult. Oh, I wouldn't have taken that. But then, who sent them on the mission? I think behind Putin's mind is, who sent you? You just come here to draw attention to yourselves. If you are going to be a mediator, one of the characteristics is that you must be neutral. Now, South Africa is not neutral. It's on the side of Russia that even insulted him. So how can you now say you are a peacemaker when you've already taken sides? Yes, some of the other African leaders have not taken sides. They've been neutral in votes at the United Nations and what have you. But definitely not South Africa, whose brainchild this whole mission was. He is on the side of Russia. So how do you even expect to be received at Kiev? And in any case, as you rightly said in your intro, both Kiev, Ukraine, Moscow, Russia have shut down the peace plan. It was no peace plan. I said it on this program several times. The people that I expect who have the characteristics are the Pope, probably Switzerland. They can then have on their side China, who have not committed itself as much as the United States has done, and one or two others. Those are the people who have the characteristics of being mediators. They have the gravitas, and whose proposals will be treated with respect, even if they're going to be rejected. But, uh, you know, so I mean, I'm not surprised at the kind of reception that the African leaders got, but to the extent that they are perceived by the world as representing us, I feel very aggrieved. And I look forward to an opportunity to meet the Russian ambassador in Nigeria and tell him that they just blew any chance of Africa being their friend. It's an insult.
Sir, but do you think that African leaders would actually take the view that, given the level of disrespect, it's now time to start to push Russia away? Or would they be blinded by any sort of financial investment that Russia may want to make in Africa? Is this significant enough to impact Russian presence in Africa?
No. I mean, diplomacy calls for wisdom, and you file this away. because you don't want to cut your nose to spite your feet. Russia is still a big power. Africa still needs things to gain from Russia. From Russia. Africa still needs something to gain from this war coming to an end. So you file this away, and probably the opportunities will present themselves where you will remind Russia of how not to make enemies, how to make friends, even in the middle of a war. And I know what's likely to happen. If Putin is not there, they will say they also have problems with Putin, as even their heads of state. He doesn't listen to advice. He's not experienced. He was just an intelligence officer, used to executing people and all that kind of thing. But we need to show wisdom in not overreacting to this, partly because we brought it on ourselves in any case.
Mm. So one quick question on this before we leave this and move on. I want to talk about India and the US. But given how quickly Putin intervened, would he have seen that peace proposal before the meeting, or was it just being somewhat hot-headed in his response? Well, because it was really very quick into the presentation that interruption took place.
Well, the delegation went first to Kiev, and by the time they left Kiev, I was even aware of the items on their peace proposal. So I'm absolutely sure that Putin was also aware of the items on the peace proposal. And do you know that he's now invited the whole of the 54 African leaders for the Russian African Summit. And on this platform, I have been very, very critical of all and sundry, always summoning African leaders, and they drop everything they are doing and they head off, whether to Paris or Russia or the United States or Turkey or Japan or India. They all hurry over there. Those people don't come here visiting us. And I suggested on this program that, all right, if this year we hold the summit in Tokyo, well, next one will be held in an African country. But no, it hasn't been like that. We drop everything we are doing and answer to the summons. But this summons to this Russian African Summit coming so soon on the heels of the insult, it rubs me the wrong way.
I know you've just responded to the wisdom of diplomacy in what you said a few minutes ago, but wouldn't this be a good opportunity for African leaders to boycott that summit?
Assuming they can all read from the same page. Assuming they can all read from the same page, I get the feeling that a lot of African leaders actually look for opportunities to run away from their own country. But, and we've got to say this, we've said it here before, if countries like Nigeria or a country like Nigeria were to play its rightful role, then the chances are we can we can't enforce, but at least we can draw African leaders' minds to the propriety of reacting to insults by this kind of thing. And that reminds me and gives me an opportunity to remind the audience on this platform of what Mandela said, that until Nigeria gets its act together and starts playing the role it should be playing, the Black race and the African countries will, will always be insulted. And that's what we have just seen happen in Moscow.
Thank you, sir. Let me go to the United States and talk about the reception that President Biden gave the Indian premier when he visited the United States on a state visit. Some have said he seemed to have gone over and beyond what would have been expected for that state visit. What is your view on how the United States received India?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I'm not even, I don't think if you hadn't brought it up, I probably would have found a way to bring it up myself, because this is a lesson to a country like Nigeria. Each time some of us suggest that Nigeria should take, to assert itself, there are always people who say, not with the West controlling our economy, not with the way we are so dependent on the United States. We cannot assert ourselves. We have to be hooked to the apron strings of the West all the time. But what India had done is to show you that it is possible for you to assert yourself and yet still secure respect from the superpowers of the world. And what is this? What are the things that India has done? India has developed itself domestically. It has built a military industrial complex while growing its economy. It has also grown its military capability, and to such an extent that it cannot be ignored. It's as simple as that. It's also the same thing that Erdogan is doing in Turkey. But if you think that you will secure the respect of people and the treatment that you deserve by being tied up to the apron strings of one side, then you are mistaken. You won't. Now, India has got itself to a state where Russia cannot ignore it, China cannot ignore it, and the United States, that likes to tell off everybody who doesn't kowtow to it, cannot ignore it and cannot be rude to it. So, and that's why I think that we should pay a lot of attention to how India, not even just Singapore, India has grown from a third world country to a first world country, and yet still claiming that it is a non-aligned country. It has interpreted non-alignment to fit its own national interest, while we in Africa mouth non-alignment as if we are talking about neutrality, as if non-alignment means economic alignment with the West and political non-alignment on UN resolutions. Because politically, if you are economically aligned, you cannot be politically non-aligned. We are just fooling ourselves with what, and that's what we've been doing since 1960 when we became independent. So we should look at what what India is doing. We should look at what Turkey is doing. Those should be role models that we should seek to apply in the development of Nigeria. With the kind of population we have, with the kind of resources we have, leadership, a vision are what we need in Nigeria.
One key part of the state visits has been the fact that, in fact, I think just a few hours ago, there was the joint press conference between Modi and Biden. And one of the things is that Modi has not actually had a press conference, I think in almost 9 years, where he's taken questions from the press and he gets to the US and has accepted to do that. How significant is that joint press conference to US-India relations?
In planning the joint press conference against opposition by the Indians, incidentally, they agreed that there will only be, I think, 2 questions. 2 questions. You cannot know, because both sides have to agree on the modality, not just a free-flowing press conference. Modi didn't want questions on press freedom, on religious freedom. He didn't want any question on Hindu nationalism. He didn't want any question on, I always, and I'm always saying this, and I really wish somebody would challenge me with facts, with data, that the kind of insurrection that you have in India, if you had it in Nigeria, the whole world and the heavens will hear about it. Right now, going on in India, there is a section where there are 2 ethnic nationalities living next door to each other, who are armed to the teeth with guns and have barricaded, they barricaded the road linking the 2. They've dug trenches. Men, women on both sides are armed with guns, and they are said they are prepared to shoot, to kill each other because there are movements to change the ethnic balancing in that area. And Modi has just ignored that and gone off, asserting the position of India on the world scene. If this is happening in Nigeria, oh brother, in fact, the president would dare not leave town, or else the press will tear that president to pieces. There is we demand of Nigeria what we don't have in other countries. There are, even in China, there are insurrections going on. It's not in every part of China that the central government, in fact, has asserted a presence and control. But in Nigeria, the moment there is, I'm sorry, I am not insensitive to the sufferings of some people in different parts of Nigeria where there are conflicts between ethnic nationalities, where people get kidnapped, where people get killed. No. They have my sympathy, but there is, and I keep saying this, there is no country in the world that has finished solving its domestic problems before it asserts itself globally. I try and remember the time when they call it the troubles in Northern Ireland. They didn't stop the United Kingdom still being regarded and acting as a important power, a global power in the world. But we always expect that Nigeria must finish solving all its domestic problems before it can then assert itself globally. So that is really, to me, the lesson which I will learn, and I will please before the Nigerian intellectual elite to draw from the way India has been received and is being treated by the United States.
Let me move slightly to one other challenge that President Biden is facing, and that has to do with people accusing him of delaying to release the intelligence report relating to COVID-19. And he said, let's wait for the Secretary of State to meet with the Chinese. Let's wait for, and we'll talk about some of his comments after the US and the Chinese met. But zeroing in on that intelligence report regarding COVID and the fact that it's been delayed, what is that saying to us?
I wish that the United States would, at this time, have a leadership that can be dependable in terms of its policies. I'm going to lump with COVID-19 and another issue. You cannot send your Secretary of State to China to try to smoothen feathers and perhaps prevent Chinese-American relationship from even falling below an acceptable level, and yet refer to the Chinese leader as a dictator. Yes, there's no doubt. The Chinese don't claim that they are Democrats with a capital D. No, they don't claim that they are practicing democracy. If probably there's anything, they probably will say they are practicing, central socialism or democratic socialism or something like that. Fine. But it's not when you are seeking to repair relationship, that you still start calling your opponent names. The message you are sending is, we are not serious. The trip by our Secretary of State is just for show. We don't really mean it to be significant. And that is not the way for a superpower to behave. If you are going to uh, have a negative relationship with another country, then you go all the way. You are negative about everything with that country. But on one hand, you cannot be seeking to repair relationship, and the other hand, you're going for abusive language in talking about the leadership of the other country. So to that extent, I'm not impressed. But then I said this 2.5 years ago when everybody was clapping about the victory of the Democrats. And I said, well, I mean, I'm pro the Democratic Party, but I think they've got the wrong president at this time. And I've been proved right. He hasn't shown that kind of the kind, he hasn't shown it, that the kind of capability and the kind of what we expect to see from the Chinese actually are showing, the more of that they're showing that they are more, they have their fingers on what it takes to be a superpower. Frankly, Biden and Putin seems to be like twin brothers in the way in which they are. I'm not saying the kind of sophistication that one expects to see. And that then relates to whether, the release of this intelligence report on COVID-19, as regards whether it comes from China or not. What do we expect to gain by this intelligence report being released? I just think that Congress is a busybody meddling in what it should leave to the executive branch. It's going to create problems for the United States in terms of its relationship with China. And even though the intelligence report is going to be released, even though it has missed the deadline that was set for it, but it's then just going to add to the problems between China and the United States. What that report, because again, one is aware of some of the bold terms in it. It didn't say the Chinese deliberately allowed that virus to escape. It didn't say so. So intent, which is an element in criminality that is very important, is not there. So what new thing are you telling us that COVID-19 escaped from a Chinese laboratory? So what is new? And what do you intend to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Nothing, except to create more, to muddle up the waters of diplomacy more.
Let me go back to Africa briefly, sir. And this is relating to the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, which has now had more countries sign up to be part of that project. This seems to be good news for Nigeria, coming at a time when Nigeria, obviously a new administration is in place. Nigeria is obviously trying to do more. What is your take on the gas pipelines between Nigeria and Morocco and the implications it has for the status of Nigeria as that giant of Africa that we're all hoping that Nigeria will not only emerge to be, but the substance of that giant will start to show forth. What is your reaction to that news, sir?
Well, there are 2 points I would like to make. The first is that this is a better pipeline model than the original one. The original one was going to pass from Nigeria to Niger through the Gao, then through the Sahara Desert, all the way up to the Arab country. And I was opposed to that because really the Sahara Desert is a playground for terrorists. It's a playground for kidnappers. It's a playground for all kinds of negative things. And I thought that pipeline would be exposed to being blown up, and we may then end up having to pay, funds to these terrorists to lead the pipeline alone. This present one, which then seems to follow the coastline through countries, Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Mauritania, and all the way surfacing Senegal, Mauritania, and then to Morocco, and then through the Mediterranean Sea to Spain. It's a better one. However, let me add this caveat. They said, don't trust the Greeks, even when they bring gifts. Any arrangement that involves French-speaking African countries, I will not hold my breath. We have seen what at the 23rd hour, what they did with ECHO, the common currency in ECOWAS that they tried, that ECOWAS, was the plan by ECOWAS for a common currency in ECOWAS. At the last minute, France got the French-speaking African countries to adopt the same ECHO as their own currency, still tied to the French central bank, which still would have dictated the value and what have you, until the African heads of states, ECOWAS, raised an uproar about the intention and the control again of France through the Côte d'Ivoire over this matter. So that Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire are now involved in this pipeline, I'm not going to hold my breath until I actually see the success of it.
Thank you, sir. Before we leave Africa, there is another success story that I'd like to hear your views on. And just a few days ago, 18th to 21st, the Afrexim Bank was doing their 30th anniversary. And Afrexim Bank is something that a lot of people maybe had not even heard of. the good work that's happening at the Afrexim Bank. And one of the things that struck me is the fact that the bank was actually inaugurated in Nigeria, and a number of investors, African governments came together to set up the Afrexim Bank. What is your take on Afrexim Bank, number one? And number two, is this competition for the Africa Development Bank? I'd like to hear your views on that, sir.
I am extremely proud of the success of the Afrexim Bank. The way it has, I think it was 10 billion assets, capital when it was formed, and it's grown now to, I think, either 30 billion or 50 billion. I'm not really sure. It's been in existence for 30 years, quietly, raking up success upon success. One of the most important of his achievements has been how it is put together, is put in place mechanism that if Mali sells goods to Ghana, and Ghana has goods to sell to Mali, Afrexim Bank guarantees that they can both pay in their local currencies, and it will serve as a clearing house and balance out the accounts, so that neither Mali nor Ghana have to go and look for dollars to pay for the goods. So it's like you use your local currencies to do your trading, and they have put in place mechanism that will serve as the clearing house. I'm very impressed with that, because it may be a small step, but the Chinese say, and you know, there are times we try to disparage some of these quotations, because we quote them so often. But the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step away from home. You've got to take that first step. And this clearing house is supposed to eventually end up with an African common currency. Not next year, not in 5 years' time. It may not even be in 50 years' time, but they have begun. They have started. And that is, to me, a good achievement. Number two, and I will tell you the significance of this. The Afrexim Bank has now served as a bridge with the what do you know with is it CARICON or CARICON, the Caribbean Central Bank Institution. They've admitted the Caribbean Central Bank Institution to be a member of the Africa Exim Bank, so that they can now, they sold shares to them, so that they can now use that to increase trade between Africa and the Caribbean. And there were 3 or 4 heads of states from the Caribbean countries who were present at this 30th anniversary celebration in Accra, Ghana. And yet this was at the time when one or two of the Caribbean countries had applied to the African Union to be observer nations, and they've been turned down, and yet African Union was admitting Israel. What was the racial congruity between Africa and Israel that is not multiplied 100 times between Africa and the Caribbean countries? I am so proud of the achievement of the African Exim Bank. They deserve our applause. And there was a proposal by the president of Ghana, who was the chief host, that actually African Exim Bank should become a specialized agencies of the African Union. I'm not too sure whether I should applaud that, because there's so much politics in the African Union that has slowed it down. And I wouldn't want it to slow down the progress of the Afro-Exim Bank. But it simply shows the enthusiasm with which even African leaders embrace the Afro-Exim Bank, and it is under the control of the Africans. So kudos to the president of that bank and the management team that seems to be controlled by the Africans. Kudos to them.
On that note, we'll end the program tonight. I think I've taken you over. Sorry for that, sir. And thank you to our viewers who are there. I saw some comments there. I think you agreed with Prof, the person that said colonialism hasn't ended yet. And someone else is saying, well, formally it's ended, but it's been replaced by neo-colonialism, and something that we need to work on from that point. So thank you everyone for the comments there, and those on YouTube as well. Thank you for your participation. We'll be back same time next week for another session. And sir, just like we said at the start of the program, now Ocean Gate has released a statement saying that sadly the 5 people that were on board have been lost, and like you said at the beginning, that their prayers, their thoughts are with the families of those who have perished. And I'm sure that investigation into what happened will continue. So our hearts continue to be with them. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you to our viewers. We'll be back, like I said, same time next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Wakanda forever.